Hi again, everyone. This is Jill Marsteller from the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, and now I'm here to talk to you about 2 more E's. What could she mean by 2 more E's? Exercises? Enigmas? Elephants? In fact, I mean thinking about ways to make your efforts in this project endure, and also planning for expanding to other efforts. So our learning objectives for today are, first of all, to think ahead about ways to make your investment of time and improvements in BSI rates last forever, beyond the time that you stop working there. And then also to make sure all patients in your institution have access to the same level of safety in their care. So you've probably seen this implementation framework, this grid. Peter presented it, for example, in the project overview. And you can see that the 4 E's we've recommended before are to engage, to educate, to then execute, and to finally evaluate the program. And that you do this in an iterative way, so that you may need, upon evaluation, to go back and re-educate, or you may realize that your engagement was not what it should have been. And so you can cycle through these steps. The other point of this grid is to indicate that this happens on the level of the frontline staff, on the level of the team leaders, and also on the level of the senior executives. And basically the same questions apply across all 3 of those levels. In engagement, we ask, how does this make the world a better place? In education, we say, we learn, what do I need to do from the perspective of the frontline staff? How do I do it? You convert evidence into behaviors, and you evaluate awareness and agreement with it. Then in execution, the question is, how can I do it? And you need to, for example, standardize and create independent checks and learn from mistakes. And then in evaluate, you're asking the question, how do I know that we made a difference? Well, here I submit that we really need 2 more E's. We need endure and we need expand. So the questions representing this idea of making sure this project endures is, has this become business as usual, and how do I know it will last beyond the time that I work here and the time that I'm putting forth my effort on it? And some of the things you can do are to make policies and procedures, train new people, and walk the process to make sure that it's being done the way that it's supposed to be done, with regularity and a routine nature. And then for expand, the questions are, who else needs to know this? And what's next? So you pass it on to other units and you identify and address your next challenge. For endure, we're really talking about planning for sustainability. Why would we worry about the distant future? Don't we have enough to be worried about right now, just getting this thing implemented? And of course I understand your perspective if you're saying that. But what you can anticipate happening on your unit is that staff is going to turn over. There are going to be new people, and they're not going to know how to do it the way that everybody else does it. There are going to be new projects. There'll be all sorts of distractions to what you're trying to get done here. In addition, if you are doing well, there will be complacency. One team that we worked with had just had their 6-month celebration of no infections, and the month after that they got 3 infections, and then the 2 months after that they got 2 more infections. And so there may come to be some complacency if you're doing well. And then in addition to that, there are going to be emergencies or complex cases where someone says, no, absolutely, we have to make an exception to the protocol. And the more this happens, the less routine the use of the evidence-based practices will be. And so because you know all of those things will happen sometime in the future, you want to go ahead and plan to sustain what you've done here. Things that you can do now to support your long-term viability of the BSI reduction are to write it into policy. Make sure that your procedure reflects evidence-based practices that you've learned for this project. In addition, you want to include it in your training for all new members of staff. You want to check regularly to be sure that this is continuing to be routine practice. Among the things you want to do is review the checklists that are submitted online insertions. Do the checklists indicate that yes, indeed, every last one of the evidence-based practices was adhered to? Yes, we had full barrier precaution. Yes, we used chlorhexidine, and so on. Further, you want to check supplies regularly to be sure that all of the supplies are being used. So one team told us, for example, that they knew they had a problem when they saw the full barrier drape overflowing in the drapes drawer, because what it told them was that while people were doing line insertions, they weren't using the drape they were supposed to be using. They rather were using something smaller that was preferred by someone. And so look for clues like that in your supply chain. Speaking of supply chain, be sure to set up a reliable supply chain. There's nothing worse than running out of something that you absolutely have to have. So you may want to set up a borrowing protocol of some kind across units, some sort of an alert system so that you know well in advance that something's running out. And again, we're trying to make this system as reliable as possible and as easy as possible for the providers so that they can do the right thing every single time. I would also set up a quarterly review of what you're doing with your executive partner. And this is going forward. After you've got the thing implemented, you're getting some success, you want to make sure that going forward, whether you're still working with Hopkins or not, whether you're still working with your hospital association on this or not, that nevertheless, you're having regular meetings with that executive partner about safety issues on your unit and about how the bloodstream infection protocol is being adhered to. I also highly recommend setting up a learning network of peers. This is your chance to get to know other hospitals, people from other hospitals and other ICUs, and to set up a group where you can actually talk to each other about issues that you run across over time. Learn from each other. There's a ton of great knowledge out there that is the experience of your peers, and you want to be able to tap that when you need it. You want to also be able to share what you know with your peers, and so be sure to set up some kind of a vehicle for you to get in touch regularly about your continued progress, your barriers that you face, and what solutions people are coming up with. And then if for some reason you stop having your team meetings and your HEIC person is not coming to your unit as regularly, be sure to have some regular meetings with the HEIC department so that you stay on the same page regardless of how frequently you're meeting. In addition, I want you to think about expanding. You want to spread the intervention to other units within your own hospital. Why would you think about doing that? After all, as I said, you've got your hands full just keeping things going in your own unit. Well, it's because it requires self-study and it solidifies your own understanding of what you did well, what you didn't do well. It is a self-review so that you can assess yourself and come up with ideas that you think would be better. When you have to teach someone else, you get a much more solid understanding of what it was you did and what you would recommend and what you wouldn't recommend. Also, you want to be sure to be providing equal protection for all your patients. Lines are placed elsewhere. You don't want someone to end up with a higher likelihood of obtaining an infection because they happen to go in to a different unit than yours, and your unit is the only one that is undertaking this intervention. Further, the unique challenges of other units may offer new ideas to you, new methods. They come up with a slightly different way of doing things, and maybe you'll decide, wow, I think maybe we should try that. They seem to have come up with a great idea. Let's give it a try. So it may change some of your perceptions of your own implementation. Expand can also mean spreading to new projects. So this is a slightly different spin on the idea of expansion, but it's also highly recommended. And why, you might ask, would I think about my next project? Well, it's important for you to know that quality can always improve. There are always defects that we can observe in care. And when you concentrate on one thing, sometimes other issues slip a little bit. But even if they don't, there's always a way to do things better. And so you know that there are other challenges out there. And it makes sense for you to use this capacity, these skills that you've built working on the CUSP BSI project to make care better in other ways. You wouldn't want to have just developed this fabulous quality improvement team and then just have them disband when they could be working on improving care for your patients. It also helps to maintain engagement of staff, keep their interest and their attention, as well as the interest and attention of management, by continuing to take on new projects and solve new problems. Further, it permits you to have some control over what the next initiative will be. You don't have to have the next initiative handed to you because you've already, as a group, decided what you're interested in attacking, what you think your biggest next problem is, and therefore you have a better sense of ownership because it came out of your unit as opposed to being given to you to go do. That then results in a more rewarding environment for everyone because things continue to be challenging, they continue to have inspiring results, and people like to come to work because they know they're working on making things better. So your action items going forward are, first of all, to start planning now for sustaining the intervention for years to come. Whatever stage you are in your implementation of this intervention, you want to sit down and say, what can I do to make sure that this is going to be continued after I'm not here any longer? I've given you some suggestions, and I know that you can come up with a lot more suggestions of your own from your team. You also want to work with your executive partner and unit heads to expand the intervention to other units. It can be very rewarding to have interactions with your ER, with your floors, about what you've done and what you thought went well, what you didn't think went well, and what they might try. Engage your executive partner for this, work with the other unit heads, and make it hospital-wide so that everybody that comes to your hospital has the same very low chance of acquiring an infection from a central line placement. And then finally, I want you to go forward and engage staff in thinking about the next mountain that they would like to climb while maintaining these low BSI rates that you've been able to achieve. Again, this is part of making sure everybody feels engaged in the process of improving quality, that they know that their input is valued, and that they had something to do with improving care on their unit, therefore making their work more rewarding. Finally, I offer you some references if you'd like to do some further reading in the areas of sustainability and spread, and I appreciate your time. Thanks.